It was a sunny afternoon at Los Angeles International Airport, one of the busiest hubs in the world. The first-class lounge buzzed softly with the sounds of travelers settling into plush leather seats, sipping on complimentary drinks and chatting quietly. Among them was Sandra Bullock, an Academy Award-winning actress known not only for her talent but also for her down-to-earth personality. She had just wrapped up a long day of meetings and promotional events, and all she wanted was a quiet moment to herself before boarding her flight. Sandra wore a simple yet stylish outfit, dark jeans, a cozy sweater, and a pair of sneakers. She wasn't trying to make a statement or draw attention. Instead, she blended seamlessly into the crowd. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, and oversized sunglasses rested on top of her head. She carried a small tote bag filled with scripts, notes, and a book she'd been meaning to finish reading. To anyone who didn't recognize her face, she looked like any other traveler passing through the terminal. She found a comfortable spot near the large windows overlooking the runway. Outside, planes taxied back and forth, their engines humming faintly in the background. It was soothing, almost meditative. Sandra ordered a cup of coffee from the barista stationed nearby and settled into her seat. Pulling out her phone, she scrolled through emails while occasionally glancing up to watch the activity outside. For once, no one seemed to notice her, or if they did, they were polite enough not to bother her. But peace rarely lasts long in places like this. Just as Sandra began typing out a response to an email, the atmosphere shifted slightly. A woman entered the lounge, her presence immediately commanding attention. She was dressed impeccably, wearing a designer suit that screamed wealth and power. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she strode confidently toward the seating area. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup was flawless. Around her neck hung a sparkling necklace that caught the light every time she moved. Every detail about her screamed opulence. The woman scanned the room with a critical eye, her lips curling into a subtle sneer as she took in the other passengers. She carried herself with an air of superiority, as though the mere act of being surrounded by ordinary people offended her sensibilities. She walked past several empty tables, seemingly dissatisfied with each one until she finally chose a seat diagonally across from Sandra. As she sat down, she placed her expensive handbag carefully beside her and adjusted her scarf with deliberate precision. For a few minutes, there was silence. The woman busied herself with her phone, occasionally letting out dramatic sighs as though she were inconvenienced by even the smallest details. Then, without warning, she broke the calm with a sharp comment directed at no one in particular. "Honestly," she said loudly, her voice dripping with disdain, "you'd think they'd screen who gets access to these lounges. Some people clearly don't belong here." Her words hung heavy in the air and several heads turned in her direction. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond. Was she talking about someone specific? Or was this just her way of asserting dominance? Either way, it was clear she intended to be heard. Sandra, however, remained unfazed. She glanced up briefly, meeting the woman's gaze with a polite smile before returning her focus to her phone. If anything, she seemed amused rather than insulted. After years in the spotlight, Sandra had grown accustomed to rude remarks and backhanded compliments. They came with the territory of being famous, and she had learned to let them roll off her shoulders. Still, the tension in the room was palpable. The woman, emboldened by the lack of resistance, decided to push further. This time, her comments became more pointed. "Oh, look," she exclaimed, her tone laced with mockery. "Even she thinks she belongs here? I guess fame doesn't pay what it used to." Her eyes flicked dismissively toward Sandra, making it abundantly clear who she was referring to. There was a collective intake of breath from the other passengers. While some admired her audacity, others cringed at her blatant rudeness. Despite the jab, Sandra didn't react. She continued scrolling through her emails, her expression calm and composed. Inside, though, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of irritation. Not because of the insult itself, she knew better than to take such things personally, but because of the unnecessary cruelty behind it. What gave this woman the right to judge others so harshly? As the tension mounted, one person, in the lounge couldn't help but take notice. Sitting a few feet away, partially hidden behind a magazine, was Keanu Reeves. Known for his humility and kindness, he had been observing the scene unfold with growing concern. Unlike many celebrities, Keanu preferred to keep a low profile, often blending into crowds without drawing attention to himself. Today was no exception. He arrived alone, dressed casually in jeans and a leather jacket, looking every bit like the relatable guy next door despite his Hollywood status. When the woman's insult reached his ears, Keanu lowered his magazine slowly, his brow furrowing slightly. He glanced over at Sandra, then back at the offending passenger. Something about the situation struck him as profoundly unfair. Here was Sandra Bullock, a woman who had achieved incredible success through hard work and dedication, being treated with disrespect simply because someone else felt entitled to judge her. It was wrong, and Keanu knew he couldn't sit idly by. For a moment he hesitated, weighing his options. Should he intervene? Would it escalate the situation unnecessarily? But then he remembered something his mother once told him. Kindness costs nothing, but it means everything. With that thought in mind, he made his decision. Setting aside his magazine, he stood up and approached Sandra's table with quiet determination. What happened next would surprise everyone, including Sandra herself. Keanu Reeves stood up from his seat, his movements calm but deliberate. He folded the magazine he'd been pretending to read and placed it neatly on the table beside him. His leather jacket creaked softly as he adjusted his posture, drawing just enough attention to make a few nearby passengers glance in his direction. But Keanu wasn't trying to draw attention to himself, at least not yet. For now, his focus was entirely on Sandra Bullock, who sat quietly at her table, seemingly unfazed by the verbal jabs being thrown her way. With slow, confident steps, Keanu crossed the short distance between them. As he approached Sandra's table, his presence seemed to fill the room. There was something about the way he carried himself, calm, composed, and unassuming, that made people instinctively sit up straighter or lean in slightly, curious to see what would happen next. When he reached Sandra's side, he paused for a moment, giving her a warm, genuine smile that instantly put everyone around him at ease. "Hey there," Keanu said softly, his voice carrying just enough warmth to cut through the tension in the air. "Mind if I join you?" His tone was casual, almost as if they were old friends reuniting after years apart. Sandra looked up from her phone, clearly surprised by the unexpected intrusion. For a brief second, she hesitated, perhaps unsure whether this was some sort of prank or publicity stunt. But when she saw the sincerity in Keanu's eyes, her surprise melted into a soft smile. "Not at all," Sandra replied, gesturing toward the empty chair across from her. Her voice was calm and friendly, betraying none of the irritation she might have felt earlier. Keanu nodded gratefully and pulled out the chair, settling into it with an ease that suggested he belonged there. He didn't ask permission to stay. He simply acted as though he already had it. And strangely, no one questioned it, not even Sandra. As Keanu took his seat, the dynamic in the lounge shifted noticeably. The rude woman, still perched smugly in her own corner, suddenly became aware of the change. She glanced over at Keanu, her perfectly arched eyebrows rising slightly as she registered his arrival. At first, she seemed confused, maybe even amused, by the sight of another celebrity joining Sandra. Perhaps she thought it was harmless, a coincidence, nothing more. But then Keanu turned his head slightly, locking eyes with her for the first time. His expression was neutral, almost unreadable, but there was something unmistakably intense about the way he looked at her. It wasn't anger or aggression. It was quieter than that, subtler. Yet it was enough to make the woman shift uncomfortably in her seat. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. Instead, she quickly averted her gaze, focusing instead on her phone as though it held the answers to whatever question Keanu's stare had posed. For a moment, the entire lounge seemed to hold its breath. Passengers who had previously tried to ignore the tension now found themselves unable to look away. Even the staff behind the counter exchanged knowing glances, silently speculating about what might happen next. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, like the calm before a storm. Sandra, meanwhile, watched Keanu with quiet curiosity. She didn't know him well personally. They had met only a handful of times at industry events, but she had always admired his reputation for kindness and humility. Seeing him step in so unexpectedly left her both touched and intrigued. "What brings you over here?" she asked lightly, leaning back in her chair as though inviting him to explain himself. Keanu chuckled softly, his signature half-smile appearing as he met her gaze. "I figured we could use a little company," he said simply, his tone light, but tinged with purpose. Sandra raised an eyebrow, catching the underlying meaning in his words. She didn't press him further, though. Instead, she nodded and sipped her coffee, allowing him to take the lead. The rude woman, sensing that all eyes were now indirectly on her, couldn't resist breaking the silence. With a forced laugh, she muttered under her breath, loud enough for those closest to hear, "Oh great, another celebrity clique." Her comment was dripping with sarcasm, designed to undermine the connection forming between Sandra and Keanu. But rather than shrinking back or ignoring her, Keanu chose to respond, and his response would leave everyone speechless. He leaned forward slightly in his chair, resting his forearms on the table as he turned his full attention to the woman. His posture was relaxed, almost nonchalant, but there was a steely determination in his gaze. "You know," he began, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the low hum of conversation in the lounge. "Some people think wealth or status makes them better than others. But real class has nothing to do with money, it's about how you treat people." The room fell silent. Every eye in the lounge turned toward Keanu, hanging on to his every word. Even the barista stopped mid-pour, frozen in place as though afraid to miss a single syllable. Keanu's voice carried effortlessly, filling the space with a quiet authority that demanded respect. He didn't raise it or adopt a confrontational tone. Instead, he spoke with the measured confidence of someone who knew exactly what he wanted to say, and why it mattered. "And honestly," he continued, his gaze never wavering from the woman's face, "I don't see much class coming from your corner." The words landed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the lounge and leaving an indelible mark on everyone who heard them. Keanu's delivery was impeccable, calm, direct, and utterly devoid of malice. He wasn't attacking her personally. He was pointing out the flaw in her behavior, holding up a mirror to reflect the ugliness of her actions. The woman's cheeks flushed bright red, her carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of Keanu's words. She stammered, struggling to find a response that wouldn't dig her deeper into the hole she had created for herself. I didn't mean," she started, her voice trembling with embarrassment. But Keanu didn't give her the chance to finish. He simply leaned back in his chair, his expression softening ever so slightly as he added, "No harm done. Just something to think about." With that, the confrontation ended as abruptly as it had begun. The woman, flustered and humiliated, gathered her belongings and scurried off to another part of the lounge, putting as much distance between herself and the scene as possible. Passengers exchanged glances, some suppressing smiles while others openly applauded Keanu's handling of the situation. One man even whispered loudly to his companion, "That guy's a legend." Sandra, watching the entire exchange unfold, couldn't help but laugh softly. "Well," she said, shaking her head in disbelief, "that was certainly memorable." Keanu grinned, his boyish charm shining through as he shrugged modestly. "Sometimes people just need a reminder," he replied, his tone light but meaningful. "We're all human, after all." As the tension dissipated, the lounge returned to its usual rhythm. Conversations resumed, phones buzzed, and coffee cups clinked against saucers. But the mood had shifted dramatically, from tense and awkward to light-hearted and appreciative. Passengers who had initially kept to themselves now struck up conversations, with their neighbors, sharing stories and laughter. The incident had somehow brought everyone closer together, united by a shared experience of witnessing something extraordinary. For Sandra and Keanu, however, the moment marked the beginning, of something new. Their impromptu meeting in the lounge had sparked a connection neither of them had anticipated. As they settled into their seats, chatting comfortably about everything from movies to motorcycles, it became clear that this encounter was far from over. Little did they know, it would pave the way for a friendship that would endure long beyond the confines of the airport lounge. The lounge, once buzzing with tension, now felt lighter, as if Keanu's words had lifted an invisible weight off everyone's shoulders. Passengers who had been quietly observing the scene couldn't help but glance at each other and exchange knowing smiles. Some even leaned over to their companions and whispered about how refreshing it was to witness such a moment of quiet heroism. The rude woman's retreat had left a void, but in its place came a sense of unity among the strangers, sharing this small corner of the airport. Sandra turned her attention back to Keanu, still processing what had just happened. Her initial surprise had given way to gratitude, though she wasn't quite ready to put it into words yet. Instead, she let out a soft laugh, shaking her head as though trying to process the absurdity of the situation. "You didn't have to do that, you know," she said finally, her voice warm and appreciative. She looked at him with genuine admiration, her eyes twinkling slightly. Keanu shrugged, his expression calm and unassuming. "I know," he replied simply. "But no one deserves to be treated like that, not you, not anyone." His tone was matter of fact, as if standing up for someone in need was the most natural thing in the world. And perhaps to Keanu, it was. He had always believed in treating people with kindness and respect, regardless of who they were or where they came from. Fame and fortune might have changed many things in his life, but they hadn't altered his core values. Their conversation shifted naturally from the earlier incident to more lighthearted topics. Sandra asked Keanu about his recent projects, and he responded with enthusiasm, though he remained humble about his achievements. They discovered they shared a love for adventure, both loved motorcycles, and often found solace in riding through open roads when life got too hectic. Sandra mentioned how freeing it felt to ride without a destination in mind, and Keanu nodded vigorously, agreeing wholeheartedly. As they talked, it became clear that despite their different personalities, they had much in common. Both were private individuals who valued authenticity over glamour. They spoke candidly about the challenges of living in the public eye, the constant scrutiny, the pressure to maintain a certain image, and the difficulty of finding moments of peace. Yet neither complained. Instead, they expressed gratitude for the opportunities their careers had afforded them. At one point, Sandra leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "people always assume we lead these perfect lives because of what they see on screen or in magazines. But the truth is, we're just like everyone else, trying to figure things out as we go." Keanu nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Exactly," he agreed. "And sometimes I think we forget that fame doesn't make us immune to struggles. It just makes them louder." His words resonated deeply with Sandra, who smiled in acknowledgement. It was rare to find someone who truly understood the complexities of their shared experience, and she felt a kinship forming between them. Meanwhile, the rest of the lounge seemed to hum with newfound energy. Passengers who had previously kept to themselves began striking up conversations, inspired by the warmth and camaraderie sparked by Keanu's intervention. A young couple sitting nearby started chatting with an older gentleman traveling alone, while a group of business travelers debated their favorite films. Even the staff behind the counter joined in, offering friendly recommendations for snacks and drinks. The atmosphere transformed from sterile and impersonal to lively and welcoming. Back at Sandra and Keanu's table, the conversation took a reflective turn. Sandra brought up the topic of humility, something she admired greatly in Keanu. "You handled that situation so gracefully," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the spot where the rude woman had sat. "Most people would have either ignored it or blown up completely. But you struck the perfect balance." Keanu chuckled softly, brushing off the compliment with characteristic modesty. "I just did what felt right," he explained. "Sometimes, all it takes is reminding someone to be kind. We're all human after all." No one's perfect. His perspective stayed with Sandra long after the words left his lips. In Hollywood, where egos often ran high and competition could breed resentment, Keanu's groundedness stood out like a beacon. She realized then why so many people admired him, not just for his talent or good looks, but for the quiet strength and decency he exuded in everything he did. Before long, the announcement for their flight echoed through the lounge, signaling it was time to board. Sandra glanced at her watch, surprised at how quickly the hours had passed. "Well," she said, rising from her seat, "I guess this is our cue." Keanu stood up as well, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. For a moment, they stood there, unsure whether to say goodbye or suggest continuing their chat on the plane. "Same flight?" Keanu asked, tilting his head toward the boarding gate. Sandra grinned. "Looks like it." They walked side by side toward the gate, their steps synchronized despite their differing heights. Along the way, they exchanged stories about past travel experiences, Sandra recounting a hilarious tale of getting lost in Tokyo, and Keanu describing a memorable road trip across Europe. Their laughter drew smiles from fellow passengers, who couldn't help but notice the easy rapport between the two stars. When they reached the gate, the line to board stretched ahead of them. Rather than parting ways immediately, they decided to wait together, continuing their conversation as though they'd known each other for years. Other passengers occasionally recognized them and whispered excitedly to their companions, but neither Sandra nor Keanu paid much attention. They were too engrossed in their discussion to care about the whispers around them. Eventually, it was their turn to board. As they stepped onto the jet bridge, Sandra turned to Keanu with a playful smile. "Thanks again for earlier," she said sincerely. It meant a lot. Keanu waved a hand dismissively, though his smile revealed how touched he was by her gratitude. "Anytime," he replied. "Besides, it gave me an excuse to hang out with you. That's a win in my book." They parted ways temporarily to settle into their respective seats, promising to catch up later during the flight. As Sandra settled into her window seat, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of optimism. What had started as an ordinary day at the airport had turned into something extraordinary, a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, kindness could shine through and bring people closer together. For Keanu, the experience reinforced his belief in the power of simple actions. He didn't consider himself a hero. He had merely done what he thought was right. Yet the ripple effect of his decision to stand up for Sandra extended far beyond the confines of the lounge. Strangers who had witnessed the exchange carried the memory with them, drawing inspiration from the quiet courage and compassion displayed by the man they called the nicest guy in Hollywood. As the plane taxied down the runway and lifted into the sky, neither Sandra nor Keanu could have predicted how profoundly this chance encounter would impact their lives. Little did they know, their newfound friendship would grow stronger with time, becoming a source of support and joy for both of them in the years to come. The flight attendants moved gracefully through the aisles, offering drinks and snacks to passengers as the plane cruised at 35,000 feet. The hum of the engines provided a soothing backdrop, lulling some travelers into a light sleep while others immersed themselves in books, movies, or conversations with their seatmates. Sandra Bullock, seated by the window, gazed out at the endless expanse of clouds below. Her mind was still replaying the events from earlier, the rude woman's cutting remarks, Keanu's unexpected intervention, and the surprising connection that had blossomed between them in such a short time. Just a few rows ahead, Keanu sat in his aisle seat, scrolling absently through his phone. He wasn't particularly interested in social media or entertainment during the flight. Instead, he seemed lost in thought, occasionally glancing back toward Sandra's row. It wasn't hard to tell that he was considering whether to check in on her again. He didn't want to overstep, but something about their interaction in the lounge had felt meaningful, as though they'd stumbled upon a rare moment of genuine human connection. Finally, after debating internally for a few minutes, Keanu unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. He grabbed a small notebook from his bag and made his way down the aisle toward Sandra's seat. As he approached, she looked up from her book, her expression lighting up with recognition. Hey, she said warmly, closing the novel and setting it aside. What brings you here? Keanu held up the notebook sheepishly. I figured I'd see if you wanted to keep our conversation going or maybe take a break from flying altogether. He gestured toward the empty seat next to her. Mind if I join you for a bit? Sandra laughed softly, gesturing for him to sit. Of course not. You're officially my favorite co-pilot now. As Keanu settled into the seat beside her, the two picked up right where they'd left off in the lounge. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, weaving between topics like career challenges, personal growth, and even quirky hobbies. Sandra confessed her love for baking, admitting that she often baked pies late at night when she needed to unwind. Keanu nodded enthusiastically, sharing his own passion for woodworking. There's something therapeutic about creating something with your hands, he said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. It reminds me that there's beauty in simplicity. Their shared appreciation for craftsmanship led to a deeper discussion about finding balance in life. Both agreed that fame came with its own set of complications, constant scrutiny, unrealistic expectations, and the pressure to maintain a flawless public image. Yet neither complained. Instead, they expressed gratitude for the opportunities their careers had given them, acknowledging that the highs far outweighed the lows. At one point, Sandra leaned closer, lowering her voice slightly. You know what I admire most about you? She asked, her tone sincere. It's how grounded you are. So many people in this industry lose themselves chasing validation, but you've always stayed true to who you are. Keanu smiled faintly, clearly touched by her words. That means a lot coming from you, he replied. But honestly, I think we all have moments where we question ourselves. The key is remembering what matters. Family, friends, kindness. Those things keep us anchored. Their reflections sparked a broader conversation about humility and empathy. They talked about the importance of treating others with respect, regardless of their background or status. Keanu recounted a story from his early days in Hollywood, when a kind stranger had gone out of their way to help him during a tough time. That moment stuck with me, he admitted. It reminded me that no matter where you are in life, everyone needs a little compassion sometimes. Sandra nodded, her eyes softening. That's why what you did back in the lounge meant so much to me, she said quietly. Not because of the words you said, but because of the way you stood up for someone without expecting anything in return. That's rare these days. Keanu shrugged modestly, brushing off the praise. It's easy to be kind, he insisted. And besides, watching her reaction was worth it. Did you see the look on her face? Sandra burst out laughing, covering her mouth to stifle the sound. Oh, I saw it, she said, shaking her head. Priceless. Their laughter drew curious glances from nearby passengers, though neither Sandra nor Keanu noticed. They were too engrossed in their exchange to care about the world around them. For a brief period, the confines of the airplane faded away, leaving only the warmth of their camaraderie. As the hours passed, their conversation turned more introspective. Sandra opened up about some of the struggles she'd faced in recent years, navigating personal relationships, dealing with setbacks in her career, and learning to embrace vulnerability. Keanu listened intently, offering thoughtful advice when prompted but mostly letting her speak freely. In return, he shared stories about his own journey, including the loss of loved ones and the lessons he'd learned about resilience and healing. Through it all, a deep bond began to form between them. Though they came from different walks of life, they discovered that they shared similar values and aspirations. Both valued authenticity over appearances, kindness over judgment, and connection over competition. By the time the captain announced their descent into the destination city, they realized they hadn't just passed the time. They'd forged a friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. When the plane landed and passengers began disembarking, Sandra hesitated before standing up. She turned to Keanu, who was gathering his belongings, and placed a hand on his arm. Thank you, she said sincerely, for everything. This trip could have been awful, but you made it unforgettable. For all the right reasons. Keanu smiled, his expression warm and genuine. Anytime, he replied simply. Let's do this again soon. Maybe grab dinner sometime or trade recipes? Sandra laughed, nodding eagerly. Absolutely, I'll bring dessert. With that, they parted ways temporarily, each heading to their respective destinations. But as they stepped off the plane and into the bustling terminal, neither could shake the feeling that something special had begun. What had started as a chance encounter in an airport lounge had evolved into a profound connection, one that would continue to grow in the weeks and months to come. Back in the real world, news of the incident spread quickly. Passengers who had witnessed Keanu's intervention took to social media to share their accounts of the event. Headlines like, "Keanu Reeves stands up to rude passenger defending Sandra Bullock," dominated entertainment websites and morning talk shows. Fans praised Keanu for his chivalry, and Sandra for handling the situation with grace. Memes and GIFs of Keanu's iconic half-smile flooded timelines, accompanied by captions celebrating his reputation as the nicest guy in Hollywood. Despite the media frenzy, both Sandra and Keanu remained characteristically humble. When reporters inevitably asked about the incident, Sandra dismissed it with a laugh. It wasn't a big deal, she insisted. Just another day at the airport. Keanu echoed her sentiments, adding, "We're all human. Sometimes we forget that." While they tried to downplay the drama, fans couldn't get enough of the duo's camaraderie. Online forums buzzed with speculation about their newfound friendship, with many hoping it signaled the start of a beautiful partnership, whether platonic or professional. Some even joked that Hollywood should cast them in a buddy comedy, predicting it would become an instant hit. For Sandra and Keanu, however, the attention was secondary to the genuine connection they'd formed. Over the following weeks, they stayed in touch, exchanging texts and scheduling casual meetups whenever their busy schedules allowed. Whether it was grabbing coffee, attending charity events together, or simply venting about the stresses of life, they found comfort in each other's company. Their friendship became a source of strength and joy, reminding them both of the power of kindness and the importance of staying true to oneself. Little did they know, this serendipitous meeting would mark the beginning of a lifelong bond, one that would inspire countless others and leave an indelible mark on their lives. The buzz surrounding the incident at the airport lounge didn't fade quickly. If anything, it grew louder as snippets of the story made their way onto social media and into tabloids. Passengers who had been present that day eagerly recounted what they'd witnessed, painting vivid pictures of Keanu Reeves stepping in to defend Sandra Bullock from a rude stranger. Within hours, hashtags like Cars Keanu to the rescue and Char Sandra and Keanu began trending online, sparking conversations among fans and casual observers alike. For many, the story wasn't just about celebrity gossip. It was a reminder of the kind of behavior people admired. Fans praised Keanu for his quiet strength and unwavering kindness, qualities that had earned him a loyal following over the years. Sandra, too, received admiration for her grace under fire, handling the situation with poise and humor. Together, they became an unexpected symbol of decency in a world often dominated by negativity. As the days passed, news outlets picked up the story, turning it into headlines like Keanu Reeves schools rude passenger while defending Sandra Bullock and how one act of kindness changed an airport lounge forever. Talk show hosts couldn't resist bringing it up during interviews, asking celebrities for their thoughts on the incident. Some joked about wanting to be invited to join Sandra and Keanu's next coffee date, while others expressed admiration for how both stars handled themselves with dignity. Despite the growing attention, Sandra and Keanu remained characteristically low-key about the entire ordeal. When reporters cornered Sandra at a red carpet event a few days later, she laughed off the questions with her trademark charm. "Oh, come on," she said, waving a hand dismissively. It was just another day. At the airport, people make mountains out of molehills sometimes. Her down-to-earth response only endeared her further to fans, reinforcing the perception of her as someone who didn't take herself too seriously. Similarly, when Keanu was asked about the incident during a press junket for one of his upcoming films, He shrugged it off with his usual humility. "I don't think there's much to say," he told the interviewer, leaning back in his chair with a relaxed smile. "We're all human, right? Sometimes we need reminders to treat each other well." While their attempts to brush off the drama were admirable, the public wasn't ready to let go of the story so easily. Social media users dissected every detail, speculating about everything from the identity of the rude woman, who remained anonymous, to whether Sandra and Keanu might collaborate on a project together. Memes featuring Keanu's stoic expression and Sandra's calm demeanor flooded platforms like Instagram and Twitter, accompanied by captions celebrating their dynamic duo status. One particularly popular meme showed a split image. On one side, Keanu delivering his pointed remark to the rude woman. On the other, Sandra sipping her coffee with a knowing smirk. The caption read, "When life hands you lemons, let Keanu handle it while you sip your latte." Another depicted Keanu riding a motorcycle with Sandra sitting behind him, with the tagline, "Two Hollywood legends proving kindness never goes out of style." The viral nature of the story caught the attention of late-night comedians, who wasted no time incorporating it into their routines. Jimmy Fallon dedicated an entire segment to the incident on The Tonight Show, joking that Keanu should start offering airport therapy sessions for anyone dealing with rude passengers. Stephen Colbert quipped that Sandra and Keanu were now officially Hollywood's odd couple, suggesting they star in a buddy comedy where they solve everyday problems using wit and wisdom. Even non-fans found themselves drawn to the narrative, captivated by the idea of two A-list celebrities forming a genuine friendship in such an unlikely setting. Articles popped up analyzing why Keanu and Sandra resonated so deeply with audiences. Writers highlighted their shared values: humility, authenticity, and a commitment to staying grounded despite their fame. Others noted how refreshing it was to see celebrities celebrated not for scandalous behavior, but for acts of kindness and solidarity. Amidst the whirlwind of media coverage, Sandra and Keanu continued to nurture their budding friendship. They exchanged texts regularly, sharing updates about their lives and occasionally venting about the pressures of being in the spotlight. One evening, Sandra sent Keanu a photo of a pie she'd baked, captioning it, "Made this today. Next time we meet, dessert is on me." Keanu replied almost instantly with a thumbs-up emoji and the message, "Deal. But I'm bringing my secret recipe for chocolate chip cookies." Their playful banter extended beyond private messages. During a charity gala a few weeks after the airport incident, Sandra spotted Keanu across the room and waved enthusiastically. He grinned and walked over, greeting her with a hug that photographers captured from multiple angles. The images went viral almost immediately, with fans swooning over their undeniable chemistry. "Are they dating?" one commenter wrote beneath, a photo of them laughing together. Another responded, "Doesn't matter, they're perfect for each other either way." Though neither Sandra nor Keanu addressed the rumors directly, they seemed amused by the speculation. At a joint appearance at a film festival shortly afterward, a reporter boldly asked if they planned to work together in the future. Sandra tilted, her head thoughtfully before answering, "You know we haven't ruled it out, right, Keanu?" Keanu chuckled, adjusting his sunglasses. "Never say never," he replied cryptically, leaving fans buzzing with excitement. Behind the scenes, their bond deepened as they supported each other through personal challenges. Sandra confided in Keanu about her struggles with balancing work and family life, seeking advice on how to carve out more time for herself. In return, Keanu opened up about his experiences navigating grief and loss, sharing insights that helped Sandra reframe her own perspective. Their conversations were honest and raw, yet filled with moments of levity and laughter. One afternoon, while grabbing coffee together at a quiet cafe in Los Angeles, Sandra turned to Keanu with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You realize, we've become internet famous, right?" she teased. "People are shipping us like crazy." Keanu raised an eyebrow, feigning confusion. "Shipping us? Like boats?" Sandra burst out laughing, nearly spilling her latte. "No, silly. Like they think we're secretly best friends, or maybe something more." Keanu smirked, shaking his head. "Well, if that's what makes people happy, I'm all for it. as long as they leave us alone to enjoy our coffee dates. Their ability to laugh at the absurdity of fame and the way it brought people together was part of what made their friendship so special. It wasn't about chasing validation or feeding into hype. It was about finding joy in the simple things and cherishing connections that felt real. As weeks turned into months, Sandra and Keanu's bond continued to inspire those around them. Friends and colleagues noticed subtle changes in both of them. They seemed lighter, happier, more at peace. Whether it was Keanu cracking jokes during long filming days or Sandra radiating confidence at award shows, their newfound camaraderie had clearly left its mark. Fans, meanwhile, clung to every update about their friendship, eagerly awaiting any sign of collaboration. Some even started petitions urging studios to cast them in a movie together, citing their undeniable chemistry as proof that it would be a box office hit. While neither confirmed nor denied the possibility, the mere idea of seeing Sandra and Keanu share the screen sparked widespread enthusiasm. Ultimately, the story of their chance encounter at the airport lounge transcended its origins, becoming a testament to the power of kindness and human connection. What began as a moment of tension transformed into a celebration of empathy, reminding people everywhere that even in the most ordinary settings, extraordinary things can happen. And for Sandra and Keanu, it marked the beginning of a lifelong friendship, one rooted in mutual respect, shared values, and an unshakable belief in the goodness of humanity. Months had passed since that fateful day at the airport lounge, but the bond between Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves only grew stronger with time. What started as a serendipitous meeting evolved into something far deeper, a genuine friendship built on trust, laughter, and shared values. They stayed in touch regularly, exchanging texts, phone calls, and even handwritten notes when they wanted to add a personal touch. It wasn't unusual for one of them to call the other late at night just to vent about a tough day or share an amusing anecdote from their latest project. Their connection extended beyond casual conversations. Sandra often invited Keanu to join her for low-key outings, whether it was grabbing burgers at a local diner, attending charity events together, or taking long walks along the beach. Keanu, in turn, introduced Sandra to his passion for woodworking, showing her how to use tools and create simple crafts during downtime at his home studio. These moments weren't glamorous, they were quiet and meaningful, offering both of them a chance to step away from the chaos of Hollywood and simply be themselves. One evening, while sitting on Keanu's porch overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Sandra turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said softly, cradling a mug of tea in her hands, "I never expected to find someone who gets me the way you do. I mean, we're so different in some ways, but somehow it works." Keanu smiled warmly, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe that's why it works," he replied. "We balance each other out. You keep me grounded, and I remind you not to take life too seriously." His words hung in the air, resonating deeply with both of them. It was true. They complemented each other perfectly, filling gaps in ways neither had anticipated. As their friendship flourished, fans continued to speculate about what might come next for the duo. The idea of Sandra and Keanu collaborating professionally gained traction, fueled by playful hints dropped during interviews and public appearances. At IQD, one award ceremony, Sandra jokingly thanked Keanu for being my co-pilot through life and hopefully soon on screen. The crowd erupted into applause, and Keanu grinned sheepishly, tipping an imaginary hat in her direction. The buzz reached its peak when rumors surfaced that a major studio was developing a project specifically tailored for Sandra and Keanu. Details were scarce, but insiders claimed it would be a heartfelt comedy drama about two unlikely friends navigating life's ups and downs together. While neither confirmed nor denied the reports, their playful banter during joint appearances only added fuel to the fire. During a panel discussion at a film festival, a moderator asked if they'd consider working together. Sandra leaned toward the microphone with a sly smile. "If Keanu agrees to let me wear his leather jacket on set, then maybe." Keanu laughed, pretending to mull it over. "Only if you promise to bake me one of those pies first." The audience roared with laughter, and the moment became yet another piece of evidence that their chemistry was undeniable. Fans couldn't get enough, eagerly imagining what a collaboration between these two beloved figures might look like. Social media exploded with fan art depicting Sandra and Keanu as action heroes, romantic leads, or quirky best friends solving mysteries. The hashtags, Sand and Keanu and Dream Team, dominated platforms, reflecting the collective excitement surrounding the possibility. While the prospect of a movie thrilled fans, Sandra and Keanu remained focused on cherishing their friendship. Above all else, they understood the fleeting nature of fame and the importance of prioritizing relationships that truly mattered. For Sandra, having Keanu as a confidant provided a sense of stability she hadn't realized she needed. Whether it was discussing career decisions, seeking advice on parenting, or simply decompressing after a stressful day, she knew she could count on him to listen without judgment. Similarly, Keanu found comfort in Sandra's unwavering support. She had a way of grounding him, reminding him to embrace joy even in the face of challenges. When he struggled with self-doubt or felt overwhelmed by the demands of his career, Sandra would remind him of his worth, not as a celebrity, but as a human being. "You've got this," she'd say firmly, her voice full of conviction. "Don't forget how many people look up to you because of who you are, not what you do." Their mutual admiration extended to their professional lives as well. Both were known for their dedication to their craft, and they often sought each other's opinions on scripts, roles, and creative projects. Sandra valued Keanu's perspective because he always approached things with honesty and humility, while Keanu appreciated Sandra's sharp instincts and willingness to push boundaries. Their conversations frequently sparked ideas that inspired new directions in their work, further solidifying the impact they had on each other's careers. Years later, during an award ceremony where both were honored for their contributions to cinema, Sandra took the stage to deliver an emotional acceptance speech. Clutching her trophy, she scanned the room until her eyes landed on Keanu, seated near the front row. Her lips curved into a soft smile as she began speaking. "This award means so much to me," she said, pausing to collect her thoughts. "But tonight I want to take a moment to thank someone who has made an incredible difference in my life. Keanu. Where do I even start?" That day in the lounge reminded me of something important. True heroes aren't defined by their fame or fortune. They're defined by their actions. And Keanu? You're one of the best. The audience erupted into applause, rising to their feet as Sandra gestured toward Keanu. He stood up hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the spotlight, but his signature half-smile revealed how touched he was. As the cheers subsided, Sandra continued, her voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you for reminding me and everyone around us that kindness costs nothing but means everything. Thank you for being exactly who you are." When Sandra returned to her seat, Keanu leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Whatever, it was made her laugh, and the cameras captured the moment perfectly, a testament to the warmth and authenticity of their friendship. Later, backstage, reporters swarmed Sandra, asking her to elaborate on her tribute to Keanu. She shrugged modesty, deflecting praise as usual. "He deserves every bit of it," she said simply. "And honestly, I'm just lucky to call him my friend." For Keanu, Sandra's words reinforced what he already knew. Their friendship was special. It wasn't about accolades or recognition. It was about showing up for each other, no matter what. In an industry often criticized for its superficiality, their relationship stood out as a beacon of authenticity and compassion. Eventually, Sandra and Keanu did collaborate professionally, starring in a film that celebrated themes of resilience, humor, and humanity. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece, praising their chemistry and the depth they brought to their characters. Audiences flocked to theaters not just to see their favorite stars share the screen, but to witness the culmination of a friendship that had captured hearts worldwide. Through it all, Sandra and Keanu remained humble, refusing to let success change the essence of their bond. They continued to prioritize kindness, empathy, and staying grounded, inspiring countless others along the way. Their story served as a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, like an airport lounge, true connections can form, transforming lives in ways no one could have predicted. And so their friendship endured, becoming a symbol of hope and humanity in a world that often craved more of both. Whether on screen or off, Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves proved that real magic lies not in fame or fortune, but in the power of kindness, respect, and unwavering support. For them, it wasn't about the destination, it was about the journey, and they were grateful to be traveling it side by side.